Have you ever noticed how some people genuinely enjoy being alone? Not just tolerate it. Not just accept it. They actually like it. Maybe you've seen someone sitting alone at a cafe, calmly sipping coffee while reading a book. No phone scrolling, no anxious glances around the room. Just peaceful. Or maybe you know someone who loves taking long walks by themselves, traveling solo, or spending entire weekends happily inside their own world. And when people see this, they often assume something must be wrong. They must be lonely. They probably don't have friends. Maybe they're antisocial. But psychology tells a very different story. Because enjoying solitude isn't the same as being lonely. In fact, for many people, being alone is where their mind feels most alive. So what is actually happening inside the minds of people who enjoy being alone? Let me show you something interesting. Imagine your brain like a busy city. For many people, that city is constantly filled with traffic, noise, conversations, notifications, expectations, social pressures. It's loud. It's chaotic. And sometimes, it's exhausting. Now imagine what happens when the streets finally clear. Silence. Space. Room to breathe. For people who enjoy being alone, solitude feels like that quiet moment when the city slows down. It's not emptiness. It's relief. Psychologists often talk about the difference between loneliness and solitude, and this distinction is incredibly important. Loneliness is the painful feeling of wanting connection but not having it. Solitude, on the other hand, is chosen. It's intentional. It's the experience of being alone without feeling emotionally deprived. And when solitude is chosen, something fascinating happens inside the brain. Research from neuroscientists studying what's called the default mode network shows that when we're alone and not focused on external tasks, our brain activates a network responsible for reflection, creativity, memory processing, and imagination. In simple terms, when you're alone, your brain starts talking to itself. Not in a strange way, but in a deeply productive way. It starts replaying experiences, connecting ideas, solving problems, and exploring thoughts that usually get buried under the noise of daily life. This is one reason why people who enjoy solitude often appear thoughtful, introspective, or even creative. Many writers, philosophers, artists, and inventors throughout history had a strong relationship with solitude. Think about someone like Albert Einstein. He once said that the monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind. When you're alone, your mind has space to wander. And wandering minds often discover things busy minds cannot. But creativity isn't the only reason some people love being alone. Another major factor is emotional recharge. You've probably heard the word introvert before. But the idea of introversion is often misunderstood. Being introverted doesn't mean someone hates people or avoids social interaction. It simply means their mental energy works differently. For many introverts, social environments are stimulating but draining. Conversations, group dynamics, noise, emotional cues, all of this requires mental processing. It's like running multiple apps on your phone at once. Eventually, the battery starts to drain. Solitude is the charger. When someone who enjoys being alone spends time by themselves, their brain gets the opportunity to recover. It's not escape. It's maintenance. Think about it like this. If extroverts gain energy from being around people, introverts gain energy from being away from them for a while. Both experiences are valuable. Both are necessary. They're simply different ways of regulating mental energy. And interestingly, people who are comfortable being alone often develop another psychological strength that many others struggle with. They become familiar with their own mind. Now that might sound simple, but it's actually rare. Many people feel uncomfortable when they're alone with their thoughts. Silence can feel awkward, boring, even slightly unsettling. So they immediately reach for distractions, social media, television, constant messages, background noise. But people who enjoy solitude have learned something powerful. They've learned how to sit with themselves. They understand their emotions better. They notice their thoughts more clearly. They become observers of their own mental world. In psychology, this ability is often linked to something called self-awareness. And studies consistently show that higher self-awareness leads to better emotional regulation, improved decision-making, and stronger personal identity. When you regularly spend time alone, you start noticing patterns in your thinking. You begin asking questions like, why did that conversation bother me so much, or what do I actually want from my life? Those kinds of questions rarely appear in the middle of crowded, noisy environments. They show up in quiet moments. And quiet moments are exactly what people who enjoy solitude create for themselves. But there's another surprising psychological layer here. People who genuinely enjoy being alone often feel less pressure to perform socially. You see, in social environments, many people unconsciously wear masks. They adjust their personality slightly depending on who they're with. They laugh at jokes they don't fully find funny. They say things they think others expect. This isn't necessarily bad. It's part of normal social behavior. But constantly performing socially can become exhausting. Solitude removes that performance. When you're alone, there's no audience. No expectations. No need to filter every thought. You can think freely. Feel freely. Be completely unedited. And for many people, that experience feels incredibly peaceful. Now here's something fascinating. Psychological studies have shown that people who are comfortable being alone tend to have stronger independence in their thinking. Because they spend time reflecting instead of constantly absorbing the opinions of others, they develop more internally guided beliefs. They ask themselves what they truly think rather than automatically adopting what everyone else believes. In other words, solitude creates space for authenticity. But let's pause for a second, because there's an important truth here. Enjoying solitude doesn't mean someone never feels lonely. Everyone experiences loneliness at times. Humans are social creatures after all. Connection matters deeply to our emotional well-being. The difference is balance. People who enjoy being alone usually don't depend entirely on others for their sense of fulfillment. Their happiness doesn't collapse the moment they're by themselves. They know how to occupy their mind. They know how to entertain their curiosity. They know how to sit quietly without feeling empty. And that ability can make life far more stable emotionally. Imagine two people spending a Saturday night alone. One feels restless, scrolling endlessly through their phone, comparing their life to everyone else's highlight reels online. The silence feels uncomfortable. The hours feel long. The other person makes tea, puts on music, maybe reads, writes, watches a documentary, or simply thinks. Same situation. Completely different experience. The difference isn't the environment. It's the relationship with solitude. And over time, people who build a healthy relationship with being alone often develop deeper relationships with others too. That might sound strange at first. But when someone understands themselves well, they tend to communicate more honestly. They choose relationships more intentionally. They're less likely to stay in toxic situations simply because they fear being alone. Because here's the truth many people slowly realize as they grow older. If you're comfortable being alone, you'll never stay somewhere you don't belong just to avoid silence. Solitude becomes a kind of emotional freedom. It allows you to choose relationships based on connection rather than fear of emptiness. And ironically, people who enjoy being alone often end up valuing meaningful relationships more deeply. Because when they do choose to spend time with someone, it's intentional. It's genuine. They're not there out of habit. They're there because they want to be. And maybe that's the most beautiful psychological aspect of solitude. It teaches you that your own mind can be a peaceful place to live. You don't need constant noise to feel alive. You don't need endless social validation to feel valuable. Sometimes the most powerful conversations you'll ever have are the quiet ones happening inside your own thoughts. So if you're someone who enjoys being alone, there's nothing wrong with you. Your brain may simply be wired to appreciate the calm spaces where reflection, creativity, and clarity grow. And in a world that constantly demands attention, stimulation, and noise, that ability might actually be one of the rarest strengths a person can have. Now I'm curious about you. Do you enjoy being alone, or does solitude make you uncomfortable? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your experience. And if you enjoy exploring the psychology of human behavior and the hidden patterns of the mind, make sure you subscribe and stay curious. Because sometimes the most interesting place you can explore is the quiet space inside your own mind.